Hello. If this is your first vagabond story, then here's a little background. Lucy and Jonathan are siblings who live in a small village by the sea. They have a friend who is a magic tree. The magic tree sends them on adventures around the world. In today's story, Lucy and Jonathan go to Ecuador. Story 13. The Medicine Maker, Ecuador. Lucy and Jonathan were curled up in their living room in front of their fireplace. The winter holidays were coming to an end, and they were determined to have as much fun as possible before school started again. They were done with their hot chocolate and popcorn and now turned their attention to Baxter, their dog. "Sit, Baxter, or you won't get a treat," said Lucy. "I don't think he is ever going to get trained," said Jonathan as Baxter wagged his tail, turned, and walked away. Lucy smiled and shook her head. She didn't mind. Baxter was generally a well-behaved dog, and she was happy to have him back at home. The previous week, Baxter had dug a hole in their backyard and run away. He was lost for a few days, but luckily had been reunited with Lucy and Jonathan. "We're so lucky the magic tree found Baxter for us," said Jonathan, as he tried to lick the cookie crumbs off his plate. Lucy was about to correct Jonathan and ask him to stop licking his plate when she looked outside and saw the bunny sitting by the window. They knew the bunny was sent by the magic tree. It meant there was another adventure in store for them. Lucy and Jonathan rushed to the forest and were soon greeted by the magic tree. "Welcome," said the magic tree. "Are you ready for your new adventure?" "We are!" exclaimed Lucy. "You are going to Ecuador. There is a lady that needs your help. Once you get there, ask for the medicine maker. She will tell you what help she needs," said the magic tree. As with their previous adventures, Lucy and Jonathan pulled the lower branch of the tree and entered the tree trunk. There, they put on the adventure backpack the magic tree had left for them, closed their eyes, and they were off. When they opened their eyes, they were on a narrow cobblestone street. They started walking, passing quaint houses and small shops. The air was crisp as they walked along the narrow sidewalk. The sun shone brightly, but it was chilly when they walked in the shadows. After 10 minutes of exploring, they decided to find the medicine maker. Lucy asked a passerby, and he pointed them to a small alley. "The medicine maker lives in the third house on the left," said the passerby. They thanked him and made their way to the house. They could smell the house before they got there. It was a strange smell, not exactly bad, but not pleasant either. They did not know what it was. As they approached the house, they saw white-colored smoke coming out from under the door. "This seems very strange," said Jonathan. "I'm sure she's just cooking something," replied Lucy, trying to explain why there was smoke coming out from under the door. They stood outside wondering what to do. Finally, Lucy picked up courage and knocked. No one answered. She knocked again, and a voice responded, "Go away or I will turn you into a frog." Lucy and Jonathan looked at each other wide-eyed with surprise. "We'd better get out of here," said Jonathan. "It doesn't seem like she wants visitors." Lucy ignored him, not planning to give up. "The magic tree sent us. We are here to help you," she said. There was silence for a moment, and slowly the door creaked open. "Why didn't you say so in the first place?" said a voice from inside the house. Lucy and Jonathan slowly made their way inside to a dark, musty-smelling room. As their eyes adjusted to the dim light, they saw a lady sitting in the corner. "Come closer so I can see the two of you," said the lady in the chair. Jonathan looked at Lucy nervously. "Don't look so nervous," said the lady as she switched on the light. Jonathan immediately felt better when the light came on and he saw who was speaking to him. A lady was sitting on the chair, her eyes twinkling. She looked very kind. The siblings looked around the room with amazement. There were all kinds of jars and containers that contained different colored liquids in them. In between the containers were several cats. They had never seen so many cats in one place before. "My name is Isabel. Welcome to Quito, Ecuador. Come with me," she said, getting up and walking into the next room. Lucy and Jonathan followed her, walking gingerly to avoid breaking the glass jars on the floor. The cats came along, meowing as they went. Isabel opened a door and they walked into a room that was filled with a green light. They walked towards a giant pot in the middle of the room. The green light seemed to be coming from the pot. Isabel motioned for them to come over near the pot, and as they peeked in, they saw a green, slimy, bubbling liquid. "This is my magic potion," said Isabel. "I have been brewing this once a year for the last 200 years. "Don't you mean you have been brewing it for the last 2 years?" asked Jonathan. "No, 200 years," replied Isabel. "How old are you?" asked Lucy. "I am 225 years old," said Isabel. Lucy and Jonathan stood in silence, astonished by the fact that they were talking to someone who was that old. Isabel continued, "My magic potion keeps me young, but it also helps people who are sick. Every year, people from all over Ecuador come to me, and I help them with their illnesses. That is why they call me the medicine maker." Isabel picked up a long wooden spoon and stirred the pot. The green glow became brighter, and the slimy liquid started bubbling more. "The reason I asked the magic tree for help is because I am missing a key ingredient in my potion. There is a blue flower that grows up in the Cotopaxi volcano. I need that flour to add to my potion. Do you see how the potion is bubbling up? Without the flour, it will keep rising and will not stop. Soon the whole town will get covered in this green slime, and I cannot let that happen, said Isabel, her brow wrinkled with worry. Why don't you just send someone from Quito to get the flour? Asked Lucy. Because the flour is only visible to those who are adventurers. And from what the magic tree has told me, the two of you are the best adventurers he has seen. If you are not an adventurer, the flower will be hidden and cannot be found, replied Isabel. Lucy looked into the pot again. She could tell the slimy liquid was rising up, and it would only be a matter of time before it overflowed from the pot. She knew they needed to get the flour as soon as possible. How do we get to the Cotopaxi volcano? Asked Lucy. There is a bus that takes tourists halfway up the volcano. From there, you can climb higher till you come to a mountain hut. Behind the hut, you will find the blue flower. Make sure that you do not let anyone know why you are going, said Isabel. I'm a better adventurer when I'm not this hungry, said Jonathan, rubbing his tummy. Lucy looked shocked and whispered to Jonathan to stop hinting for food. It's okay, said Isabel. I know you must be hungry. Go to the kitchen and help yourself to what is on the counter. Lucy and Jonathan head into the kitchen and found a big pot of potato stew being heated by a fire. As they started helping themselves, Jonathan saw a piece of chocolate on the side. He grabbed it and popped it into his mouth. As he was chewing on it, he heard Isabel come into the kitchen. I forgot to mention, whatever you do, don't eat the chocolate that is on the counter, she said. Jonathan froze. He looked at Isabel guiltily and almost swallowed the whole piece of chocolate. If you eat the chocolate, you will turn into a cat. It is my magic chocolate, said Isabel casually. Jonathan turned white. He turned to Lucy, who also looked panicked. I just ate the chocolate, he shouted as he rushed to the sink and tried to spit it out. What do I do? Don't worry, said Isabel. It's not so bad being a cat. Isabel turned and winked at Lucy, who immediately realized that she was joking. Yeah, and I think I might prefer you as a cat. This way, Baxter will have a cat friend, replied Lucy, smiling. How can the two of you be so calm? I ate the chocolate. I don't want to turn into a cat. You need to do something to help me, said Jonathan, hopping around the kitchen. Relax, Jonathan. We're just kidding, said Lucy, as she sat down with her bowl of stew. That stew is a traditional Ecuadorian dish. It's called locro de papa, said Isabel, laughing at the relieved look on Jonathan's face. They had a quick meal, thoroughly enjoying the hot stew, and once done, said goodbye to Isabel, who showed them where to board the tourist bus to the Cotopaxi volcano. Lucy and Jonathan made their way and joined a line of tourists. A tour guide approached them and they bought tickets from him and were soon on a small bus heading to the Cotopaxi volcano. The bus was filled with tourists from all over the world, but mostly everyone just looked outside the window, admiring the beautiful scenery of the Ecuadorian countryside. Before long, they could see the majestic Cotopaxi volcano ahead of them. Soon, they started climbing up the mountain road. The guide announced that they would reach a parking lot on the mountain, and from there, they needed to climb up the rest of the way to the mountain hut halfway up the mountain. The hut was as far as they could go because the path ended there. To climb up beyond the hut would require special mountain climbing equipment. I'm glad the flowers are near the mountain hut because I do not want to climb all the way up the volcano, said Jonathan. Lucy nodded in agreement. They pulled into the parking lot and everyone got out. The guide pointed them towards the path that led up the mountain. It doesn't look that difficult. I thought it would be a tough climb, said Lucy to the tour guide. You had better be prepared because it's more difficult than it looks. Once you start climbing, it gets very windy and very cold. Do you have anything warmer that you can wear? Asked the guide. Lucy and Jonathan reached into the adventure backpack and pulled out 2 foldable winter jackets that the magic tree had put in there. Once they put it on, they began their trek up the mountain. At first, it seemed calm, but in no time the wind picked up. In addition to the wind, it started getting foggy. Very soon, they could barely see in front of them. The wind was blowing them to the side and they struggled to stay on the narrow path that took them up the mountain. They could not hear themselves speak because the wind was so loud. "Stay close to me," shouted Lucy. "I think you should hold on to my backpack. That way we won't get separated." Jonathan hung on for dear life as they slowly fought the wind and the blinding fog. Eventually, they made it to the mountain hut halfway up the mountain. The path ended there and only the serious mountain climbers would carry on beyond that. The tour guide gathered them around and explained that they would need to meet back at the tour bus in 1 hour. They needed to go down a different way from where they came. It was a steep path that went straight down and took them to the bus. "Remember, if you do not make it back to the bus, we will leave without you and you will need to find your own way back to Quito," said the tour guide. Lucy and Jonathan knew they did not have much time. They quickly made their way behind the mountain hut and began the search for the blue flower. They thought it would be easy and could find it soon, but they only saw rocks around them. "This is going to be tougher than we thought," said Jonathan as he started turning rocks around to find the flower. They started searching frantically, knowing they needed to be done before the bus left back to Quito. While they had come up a winding path, the way down was different. There was a steep, muddy slope which led to the bus. Their search took them further and further away from the mountain hut and higher up the mountain. Lucy and Jonathan kept their eyes peeled but could not find the flower. "Do you think we cannot see it because we are not really adventurers?" asked Jonathan. "I know we will find it. We just need to look carefully. We cannot give up. The medicine maker is counting on us," replied Lucy. "We cannot let the green slime flood the streets of Quito." They continued their search, and soon even Lucy started getting worried. There were no flowers at all, and certainly not a blue one. She checked her watch. Time was running out. They needed to start heading back to the bus. They made their way to the start of the steep trail heading down. They were surprised by what they saw. The sand was thick and it was slower to move than they had imagined. It was almost like walking down a sand dune. They gingerly made their way down. They did not see anyone else from their tour bus. Everyone else must have made it back in time. Lucy looked at her watch and started getting worried. "Faster, Jonathan! We need to get back to Quito as soon as possible. We have to let the medicine maker know that we were not able to find the flower." "I hope we don't miss the bus," said Lucy. Jonathan was not paying attention to what she said. "Watch out! There's a donkey behind you!" he shouted. Lucy turned, and to her surprise, a donkey was walking down the hill with a big basket on its back. The donkey was heading straight to her. She managed to scramble out of the way and avoided getting knocked down by the donkey. When she turned and looked, more donkeys were making their way down. "I heard the tour guide mention that these donkeys are used to transport things up and down from the mountain hut," shouted Jonathan. "Maybe we can ride the donkey down the hill." Lucy did not respond. She knew she wasn't going to try and ride a donkey down the hill. But her mind was occupied with something else. All the donkeys that passed her had a slight blue color on their bellies. She pointed it out to Jonathan. "I think the donkeys have been lying down on something blue. It could be blue flowers. We need to go back and see where the donkeys are coming from. I think the blue flowers are there," said Lucy. "We don't have time. We'll miss our bus," replied Jonathan. Just then, they saw the tour guide walking up the slope towards them. "I've been waiting for you. We leave in a few minutes and need to rush back to the bus. We have another stop to see a beautiful lake before we head back to Quito," said the tour guide. Lucy had to make a quick decision. Do they head back to Quito without the flower, or miss their bus so they could find the blue flower? "We need to go back up to the mountain hut. We forgot something there. If the bus leaves, is there any way we can meet you at the lake?" asked Lucy, hoping the lake was just a short walk away. The tour guide thought for a minute. "I can leave 2 cycles for you down below. Once you come back to where the bus was parked, you can then cycle down to the lake and meet us there. But if you don't come in the next hour, we will have to leave and go back to Quito, and you have no way of getting back then," replied the tour guide. "Then that is what we will do," said Lucy. Lucy and Jonathan turned and head back up the slope. More donkeys were coming down, and they head towards where they were coming from. Before they got to the mountain hut, they noticed a path to the side, and it seemed like the donkeys were coming from there. They followed the path around the corner, and lo and behold, there was a large patch filled with blue flowers. This was where the donkeys had rested. They rushed and picked up as many flowers as they could, put them into their backpack, and then head down the slope as fast as they could. They eventually made it to the bottom, dusty and a little tired. There, they found 2 cycles waiting for them, just as the tour guide had promised. They hopped on and pedaled as fast as they could down the road towards the lake. It was downhill, so they could go fast, but they also needed to be careful because of the loose rocks and stones on the road that could cause them to fall. It didn't take too long before they spotted the lake in the distance. Soon after that, they spotted the tour bus. No one was by the lake, which meant everyone was back in the tour bus waiting for them. Then, to their shock, they saw the bus starting to move away. Lucy and Jonathan started shouting, but the bus was too far away for anyone to hear them. They continued pedaling faster, but it was no use. The bus was moving down the road with a large, giant cloud of dust behind it. They stopped cycling and looked at each other. Then they looked at the deserted road. There was no one else around, and they did not want to be stuck there for the night. But then, to their relief, they saw the bus turn around. The bus wasn't leaving. The tour guide had spotted them, and the bus just had to go a little forward so it could get a place to turn around. The bus picked them up, and they were soon on their way back to Quito. They entered the city and slowly made their way along the busy roads. Lucy and Jonathan were nervous. They were hoping the pot would not overflow. Soon, their fear came true. The bus was stopped, and they could hear a policeman tell the driver that the road was closed. When the driver asked why, the policeman said the road was flooded with green slime, and it was spreading to the other streets. They had to act fast. They needed to get to the medicine maker and give her the flowers so the slime would stop. They thanked the tour guide and jumped off the bus. They recognized where they were and knew the medicine maker's house was close by. They made their way through the streets and soon could see the slime. The slime was spreading all over the road and moving quite fast. They knew that it would spread all over the city if they did not stop it. When they reached the street where the medicine maker lived, they had no choice but to walk into the slime. "I'm going to ruin my new shoes," Jonathan complained. "It doesn't matter. This is more important," replied Lucy as she walked into the slime. Jonathan followed slowly, walking through the green substance. The slime was rising and was soon above their ankles and getting into their shoes. Then Jonathan fell. He slipped and went back first into the slime. His entire back was covered in slime. He tried to get up, and in doing so, slipped again. This time his front got completely covered in slime, and there was slime even dripping from his hair. He was a complete mess. He looked at Lucy for sympathy, but she was focused on getting to the medicine maker's house. She did manage to pause for 2 seconds to laugh at Jonathan and then continued on her way. Jonathan did not mind. He knew it was more important to stop the green slime from spreading. They reached the medicine maker's house and knocked on the door. No one answered. They could see the slime seeping out from under the floor, but because it had spread so far, no one knew it was coming from this house. Soon, the door opened slightly. "Come in quickly. I don't want anyone to see the slime come out of this house," said the medicine maker. They followed her in. The house was filled with slime and it was still coming out of the pot, oozing out at a steady pace. All the cats were also covered in slime. "This is never going to stop, so please tell me you have the flowers," asked the medicine maker nervously. "We do," replied Lucy, pulling out the flowers from the backpack. The medicine maker grabbed the flowers and quickly threw them into the pot. Almost instantly, the slime stopped oozing out. Then, a strange thing happened. Even the slime on the ground started disappearing quickly. They rushed to the window and saw the slime on the road was disappearing as well. Even the slime that covered Lucy, Jonathan, and the cats disappeared. They had done it. The medicine maker was very grateful to Lucy and Jonathan and offered them a meal. But the siblings were so tired, they just wanted to go home. Even the promise of chocolate cake did not tempt Jonathan. As with their previous adventures, they pulled out the golden egg from their backpack, twisted the top, and when they opened their eyes, they were back home. The end. Here are some fun facts on Ecuador. Ecuador is a country in South America. Its capital city is Quito. Can you guess the bird in the center of the Ecuador flag? It's a condor. Ecuador sees very little change in the length of its days from summer to winter. This is due to its location on the equator. Sunrise and sunset in Ecuador happen every day of the year at around 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. respectively. The official name of Ecuador is República del Ecuador, which means the Republic of the Equator. And finally, the Cotopaxi volcano has had 87 known eruptions. Its last eruption lasted from August 2015 to January 2016. That's it for this week. See you all soon.